Well, I've had a change of heart. I thought that I would slow down the time lapse and show you what I'm doing. Um, I've shown you pretty much everything this far, so I might as well show you everything, right? In case you don't know, there's 3 cylinders, and the one on the passenger side is the right cylinder. The other 2 are both marked as left cylinders. There is no center cylinder. The reason why is it has to do with the way the ports are done. This one, the exhaust ports and the intake ports are set up for a right cylinder. These 2 are both set up for left cylinders. So I probably should have showed you this before, but you can see where the cutout is on this one is way up here. If this is 12 o'clock, my cutout is like from 7 to 9 o'clock, where this cutout on the right one would be from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. So basically, that's the most important thing right there. We're going to go ahead and do this one together real quick. When I do these, I usually like to get everything all nice and lubed up first. So I'll take, excuse me. So I'll take some of this assembly lube stuff. I like this just because it's thick and it doesn't drip out while the motor's sitting. The motor might be sitting for another year. Who knows, right? Hopefully not, but just in case, we'll prepare. So I get a little bit of lube onto that. I'm going to get a little bit of lube into there, like that. And then we can go ahead and throw our wrist pin in there with the bearing and start spinning it. And there's always these little oiling slots up at the top, and I'll just force them in there, fill that little orifice up, and then just spin it until you see it all drink or kind of drank up. I don't know, till it's all gone. So, and then what I'll do is I'll leave the bearing in there. We'll take that with us. Use that in a sec. First, what we're going to do is we get out some of these washers, the end ones. And then what I'm going to do is take some blobs of grease. I'm going to put them on the connecting rod in a couple of different locations on this outside little lip here. And this is pretty good for temporary kind of glue status. Otherwise, that washer, if you put it in there dry, will just fall off, right? So now we can take our washers that have that little, I don't know what that is. Is that a chamfer? Is that a bezel? Step down? And that step down will actually grab a hold of the little bearing in there, because the bearing protrudes out from the connecting rod about a half a mil on each side. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our piston and find out which way is forward. The arrow shows which way is forward or which way the exhaust pipe is. I don't know, however you want to think of it. That number there tells you how many millimeters over it is. This is 1 millimeter oversized. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put our our little, I don't know what you call these things, circlip in. And I just noticed some of my circlips had that little straight piece that I like, and these ones don't. That kind of stinks. So what I do is I like to put in the circlip that I don't want to have to put in. So I'm going to put in the right side over here. That way my wrist pin goes in from over here and it'll hit that, and I don't have to do them both while it's on the bike. So just a little something to make it a little bit easier for me. And what I did was I started that little circlip kind of in that hole, and then I'll use that hole in my finger to kind of get them to seat right in that groove. Which it currently doesn't want to do because the camera's rolling. You know how that goes. So this has actually never happened to me before, where the whole damn thing is just stuck in weird. So now nothing wants to kind of work right. I'll just push it over with this, huh? Just like that. Fortunately, now I gotta dig that guy back out. All right, so we got the first clip in already, and that kind of pre-lubed everything right there, sliding that through. But normally what I was gonna say is I'll take a little bit of this lube and put it here, and then here in there a little bit, so that way there's a little bit of lube already started in there. Come on over here, we can get it set down on there, making sure the arrow is pointing towards the front of the bike or the exhaust. Come in there and put that down until it's lined up with that hole, like that. Now we can put, yeah, I think we got enough lube in there. And we just push it all the way through until it gets to that circlip on this side. And we go back and we pop that guy in. And I'll do it with you guys in regular mode, so that way you can see all the mess ups that happen to me too. And that's that. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a pick tool, and I'm going to take that opening in the circlip or C-ring, whatever it's called, and I'm going to shimmy it around so that way it's not in the big divot on the top of that wrist pin hole. But I'm going to put the opening somewhere down on the bottom, just so that way it's not, there's no chance that it'll jump out of there. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead, I'll put it back on time lapse to do the last one. And then hopefully the next thing we see is cylinder jugs getting put on or something awesome. See ya. All right, guys, so we just saw a few things get done. As you can see, I did get the sprocket cover polished, and it is finally on, the correct one. I got this from a guy in the UK named Reg. Thanks, Reg, if you're watching. He's also the gentleman that I got the C-ring for the crank, and really appreciate it. What a lifesaver. The sprocket cover came pretty nice. It just needed to be polished, and it had a big booger weld on the bottom. If you look here, I'll superimpose a picture of that. You can see it's pretty shiny weld, very thick weld, but kind of boogerish. So I went through, and you can see here, I cleaned it up a little bit, filed it down as much as I could, whilst keeping the metal at its proper like 4 or 3 millimeter thickness. And then I went through and polished it. As you can see, it's beautiful. And there's that spot down there. It's hard to see right now while it's sitting on that spot, but I also found this new technique for putting on cylinders by yourself. It's putting zip ties on all of the piston rings. So the piston rings are all compressed and snugged up against their respective dowel pins. One of the problems when you do this by yourself is it's real easy to have a ring shift over the dowel pin and then go in crooked and bend and break or score the wall of the cylinder. So I got a Facebook group, and the expert administrator moderator guy is a really good guy at building these bikes, and so I stole that idea from him. He actually has a YouTube channel that I found. It's called GT750 Idiot, and it sounds a little derogatory, but he's a real smart guy. His name is Peter, and he is amazing at these. And luckily, every time I get stuck, I can just go to his videos and watch his stuff, or ask him directly from his group. And it's really been advantageous to have somebody there that I trust, that I can ask stuff to. I was going to put my cylinders on, excuse me, but the GT750 Idiot gentleman, Mr. Peter Armrod, had told me that he always puts helicoils in these exhaust ports, stud holes. I've never used helicoils. I thought they were kind of cheap, or maybe a little bit less than good. But he was telling me that's what he does. If that's what he does, that's good enough for me. The original one, he told me it was going to have, most of the time, the center bolt hole gets stripped out. And it's really hard for me to show you, but that center bolt hole on both of them are pretty bad, especially this one. So I'm going to go ahead and tap them out. I got the M8 by 1.25 pitch helicoil kit. And then what you're going to do is just drill those down, without getting into the water jacket. And then you can take this tap here, and you can re-tap them to that, which will be able to hold those threaded inserts inside. Anyways, I don't know if I needed to explain all that, but I'm about ready to get started on that. I'm going to do the drilling. And yeah, thanks for watching the show. Stick around.
To be better than them. No one could ever know my shame. No one could ever feel my pain. No one could love me.
All right, guys, I finally got the cylinders done, I think. I got that exhaust bolt hole re-welded up, and I took it to my buddy Paul, who's a machinist, and he was able to drill that the correct way, and then re-tapped it back to an M8 125 thread. So that's done. I still got to clean this out a little bit before I throw it on. I was going to throw it on, but then I figured I would probably regret that and have to take it back off or something stupid, and I already found the stupid thing. It's the oil injection system. That oil injection system had all of those injectors go in each of these. So I figured I probably should get that put on before I put the cylinders on. So I spent a bunch of time cleaning these out. Again, this rubber piece here was just super crusty, so I put some Permatex type silicone on there just so it stays together and still seals, that little valley. Then I was going to go put that on, and I realized that I probably can't put it on with the starter here. So I thought, well, I probably should take the starter off. But then guess what? That means that that filler neck I just put in yesterday with all that goop dried up, I have to take that back out now. Gosh, diddly darn it. Then once all that's out, I can put that in. But then there's also one of these SRS or S.R.I.S lines comes up from a hole down under here and then connects into the cylinder right there. And I didn't put that line in. I'm such a freaking dork. I did go and I put the nipples in for all three of them. I just got to figure out which one is the one that gets the spring around it and then gets tucked up under there. And then there's a little crack under here that it's going to come up under and pop out in here. It dawned on me why this is so much harder than any other bike. It's the manual. The manual sucks. The manual tells you a bunch of stuff. It's really hard to understand, where every other manual just tells you, like, step 1, do this, step 2, do this. Any other manual would have a whole procedure from A to B. And in there, it would tell you the exact time you're supposed to put that S.R.I.S line in and all that. And it's tough when you're just a guy in your garage. That's my sob story. There's my miniature violin. So what I'm going to do now is try to just suck it up, start taking crap back off, go, 15 steps backwards so I can come back and maybe go one step forward, but probably not until tomorrow. All right, so hang with me, guys. Well, guys, that went on really well. I'm very pleased with how easy this was to get on. Thank you, GT750 Idiot YouTube channel, for suggesting that. Peter's got some good information, and that was the best one so far. Usually when I put on a cylinder, it's usually for 1 or 2 pistons only, so it's not that hard by yourself. This would have been a nightmare, or a 4-cylinder, would be a nightmare. Usually what I do is I'm holding the piston rings and I'm compressing them with my fingernails while I'm trying to push the cylinder over it. And inevitably the cylinder drops down over my fingertips and rips the tips of your fingers off or pinches them really hard. If anybody's had that done, I'm sure you know what I'm saying. So I will be using the zip tie trick probably for the rest of my life. Even on a one-cylinder bike, I'll use that trick because I'll save your fingers. And who doesn't like to have an easier time, right? Let's move on. Next up, we're going to be putting the head gasket on. My head gasket got some weird pieces coming off of it, and it was made in Taiwan, which would explain some of that. I would prefer to have maybe the made in Italy Athena brand or an actual Suzuki one, but I was unable to find that. The cylinder head goes on with this weird cutout here. There's nothing there, it's just blank. And then where this is, there's just also nothing. That's how the head goes on. The metal rings for this are actually cut past the cylinder bore by about 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 millimeters. When I inquired from the professionals online, they said that that's just space for that little crush ring to kind of fill up when you torque the head down. This gasket is 1.75 millimeters, so it's a pretty thick and burly guy. The brand is the same brand that I've used for everything. It's called NE Gaskets, and it's from Taiwan. And it says non-asbestos. This is pretty readily available, and a lot of people say that they've used it and they've had good experiences with it. I wouldn't buy this again if I had to do this again. Main reason is that things that are made in Taiwan are pretty good, but they're a few steps above Mexico, 20 steps above China, but they're also about 10 steps below like Germany and maybe 15 steps below Japan, in my experience, and maybe 10 steps below Italy. Italy makes some gaskets, an Italian company called Athena, so very Greek of them. They have a company or a gasket company that makes head gaskets. A lot of people talk really well about that. If I had a choice, I would just try and find something made in Japan because I love Japanese products personally. Let's get on over to some of the head stuff. We got the head all ready to go. The head bolts, well, the studs are in there, so we got nuts. Even though these look like bolts, these are big nuts. That didn't sound appropriate, so sorry about that. I got these from CMS NL. There's the part number there, if you can see that. And they're sold in sets of 11. There is another place, if you can't get them from CMS, called Classic Bike Fasteners, and they're out of the UK, I believe. Really good company that I bought all of my flat washers and my lock washers for the head hardware. There is no seal on these flat washers, and I was going to use those, but I was able to obtain some of the sealing washers from cmsnl.com. And I'm just going to go ahead and put those on because that is what the stock item is, although a lot of people say that you can just use the flat ones from Classic Bike Fasteners. Classic Bike Fasteners is a great company. I've ordered several parts so far. Parts come fairly quick. Somebody that worked at the company reached out one time to offer some assistance. Oh, I bought my S.R.I.S check valves in the front of the motor from them too. And very helpful people, good communication skills, great company. I highly recommend you check them out for your GT750 needs. Next up, we're going to get this head gasket and the head put on, get all the hardware put on. There's a torque sequence that I believe is in the shop manual that I'll try my best to show you guys. And a couple other things that we got to do is I just got some of these case pieces, the starter cover. There is nobody that makes the starter cover gasket, so you're going to have to cut your own out of some gasket material. At least that's what the consensus is. And then we got to do our S.R.I.S lines. The Suzuki Recycle Injection System, I think, is what that acronym stands for. Last and final thing is I got these little things that I saw another gentleman put on his bike. And a gentleman named Peter builds really nice bikes. And he was using these little P-clamps, or they're also called cable clamps. And I found this set on Amazon. It was like $9 for like 36 of these. And they actually have a hole big enough for the 10 mil, or rather, I think it's a 6 mil bolt, but with a 10 mil head. So you can pile these up all on the edge and run your S.R.I.S lines through these. So that's an awesome little tidbit there for you guys that I found. I'm going to put those on and try to just get everything all buttoned up, and then that will hopefully conclude this episode. I got the carburetor episode pretty much already done. I'm just waiting for my carburetor kit that's coming from Japan, and then I can throw that video together. And I'm hoping really soon I'll get a video of us putting that in the bike, putting the carburetors on, and fingers crossed, maybe in the next little bit of time. I won't say how long. I don't want to jinx it, but maybe in 2025, early 26, we should be able to hear this thing run. I've already got all of the carburetor intake boots. We pretty much have everything we need for the motor. We just need to get all the electronical stuff after that going. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Stick around. We'll get this head put on. Hopefully this will help you guys out on your journey. Almost done. She is the donest that she has ever been. And I went ahead and put on those S.R.I.S lines, as you can plainly see. And I'm pretty proud of them. If you don't know where they go, or where they come from, rather, it shows you here that this is the left cylinder, which would be as you're sitting on the bike. So the driver's side cylinder. That one's going to come out and come into there. This one here is your right side cylinder. And both of those run through this little protector. When I put them on, I actually put these metal cuffs onto the rubber lines first. And then I put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on the nipple and then just rammed them on. And I use these little things called pipe clamps. Get that to focus for you. And these are 1/4 inch, as it says there. And that one is actually your center line. So the center cylinder comes up with the spring and goes around through that gully there. And there's that white rubber plug is holding that line with the spring just off to the right of that brass check valve. So that's how that goes on this model. This is the L model, the 74. And there is a couple other configurations. At least the manual showed another one. And that line comes under, and it actually goes, let's see if I can get it down here to show you, to where that line is right there. And before, right after that little rubber ball that plugs up that little gully, it goes also through this little channeled, I don't know what you'd call it other than a hose holder that I think sits on bolt 15. And I might be wrong on that. And it comes up underneath this little side cover here and then comes out right at the drain for the starter. Right there. So kind of one of the downsides to this whole operation, or this whole setup, is the starter door here had to have a hole for this oil line, as well as it has to have one for the coolant line that goes up to the top of the head. So that makes it kind of tricky to take a peek in to see all your oil lines, which are all nestled in there. And oh, before I forget, this is where the center cylinder hooks up, this nipple right here. So I gotta wait to hook that up because that has to go through the starter door. And then also I need to get my radiator hose. The one I got from eBay is a little too big and I think it's gonna leak. So anyways, that's where those things come out. I made my own little grommet for this one. And the bigger one, I'm just going to reuse the used one. The gasket for this, I'm gonna end up. I bought some silicone, a rubber mat, and I'm gonna just cut it out myself. The gasket material I have at the house is only like a millimeter, like that. And this gasket that came with this original one, is about 2.5, maybe 3 mil. And I would use it, but it's kind of shrunk over the years, so it won't fill up the entire hole. And I don't want, all the dust and contaminants getting into that compartment. So that's going to just probably have to wait until another video. I'm currently in the process of rehabilitating this rubber piece here that was dry rotted with some silicone, so I can hook that up, and just some small things here and there. Also, I got these little slider, I don't know what they're called, the shaft that the bolt goes through, the pipe. I got those put in and all of my hardware mounted up. I just got a few little things here and there. She's looking beautiful. And I know I'm probably biased, but this is definitely the best looking motorcycle engine I've ever had, and I think I've ever seen come out of Japan. So, anyways, guys, thanks for sticking around and watching. I hope this helps you out with your builds. And I'll see you guys soon with the carburetor video. Take care.